Hello, everyone. I'm Robyn Grable, the founder of Talents Ascend and the Ascend Collective, and your host for Ascending Beyond Barriers. Welcome. Ascending Beyond Barriers is an inspiring podcast dedicated to showcasing the remarkable journeys of small business founders who have faced and overcome significant challenges on their path to success. Each episode delves into the personal stories of entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds, highlighting their unique experiences, struggles, and triumphs. Today, I'm excited to welcome Jennifer Gardella. For over a decade, Jennifer has helped small business owners, personalities, and startups attract their ideal clients through strategic digital marketing. A skilled writer of blogs, social media, and newsletters, she built the Gardella Group while surviving domestic violence, an experience she now courageously shares to raise awareness and empower others to support victims and survivors. Jennifer is the author of Domestic Violence Awareness, Listen for the Whispers of Abuse, and leads education efforts through jennifergardella.com. She holds a PhD from Rutgers University, a degree from Fordham, and serves as president of the board for Startup Bucks. A proud supporter of the greater Philadelphia entrepreneurship community, she's also a graduate of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. Woo-woo! All right, welcome, Jennifer. Thank you so much. Wow, there's so much there to talk about. My goodness. I'm so excited to be able to share what you're doing because it is certainly something near and dear to me as a personal experience. So I'm so excited to get to share what you're doing. Unfortunately, the situation needs to be shared, but it's an unfortunate situation. It's gotten me all like discombobulated now. But let's start with Rutgers. I lived in Jersey. Are you from New Jersey?
I'm a Jersey girl at heart, always.
So we lived in Little Falls. My daughter went to Passaic Valley High School there, and then we moved from there. So, but you're now in Philadelphia.
I'm in the greater Philadelphia area, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so tell us, you've got a lot going on. How did you start this journey of social media? Let's start there.
Yeah, so I was actually working, I was finishing my PhD at Rutgers and working for a friend. He was a divorce attorney in central New Jersey. And this was back in 2011, 2012. And his $1 million law firm went from the front page of Google to nowhere on Google. And it was at the time that blogging and social media were suddenly important. Okay. And so he hired me to rewrite his website, develop his website. And at that time, honestly, there were no training programs. Right. You learned through interviewing salespeople at the big companies that wanted you to hire them. Wow. So it was an unbelievable experience. So a sales company would come in and they'd say, we can get you in the Huffington Post for $10,000 a month. And I'd say, I can probably do that on my own. And I did. You know, it was one of those things like, well, just tell me what to do and I will be able to do it. Right. And so I graduated with my PhD, no longer wanted to be the director of marketing for that law firm, and decided to hang a shingle because I realized very early on, even though I didn't know what was happening exactly, that I had a skill set where I could help a lot of people. I mean, just like you, right? Yeah. Like all of us in the 10,000 Small Business Program of Goldman Sachs, small business owners who can't afford to hire a huge marketing team or pay $5,000 to $10,000 a month for who knows what. And so I started a business. Oh, this is a great Goldman Sachs story. I started a business that actually didn't fully launch because I was living in domestic violence. I couldn't support it. And I actually brought it back as my growth project through Goldman and just relaunched it. So it's like, even though your social media hour grew up it was born into abuse, grew up in abuse, it is now back and raging. So that's how it happened. And, you know, as I started to network way back then, a lot of people said to me, we want you to do this for us. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. It's so easy. But when an attorney makes $500 an hour, they don't want to be blogging. They want to be billing.
Absolutely. No, and that's a great point because there's so many things. Like I started, my business because I wanted to help veterans translate their skills. And then
Sure.
you get into business and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to do all these other things. They're not my core competency. It takes me longer to do them. But
Right.
I also paid the dummy tax, unfortunately, of hiring multiple, even a PR firm that took $30,000 from us.
Yes.
A huge dummy tax for me. So now you're skeptical. So what do you tell your clients or prospects? Because I'm a small business owner, very skeptical now of hiring someone else to do any of that for us. What do you tell me?
Well, first of all, I have a month-to-month contract.
Okay.
It doesn't exactly work out perfectly. You can't cancel, like the day before you expect me to deliver
Okay, great.
services. But we have no long-term contracts because I want
Okay.
you to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Most of my clients that come to me at this point have been screwed over by a bigger marketing agency, especially those more established businesses. The second thing that I tell my clients is that we take a very research-based approach. So I actually wind up telling them things that they've never heard before because running my agency with integrity, passion, and expertise, they get
Yeah.
a sense real quick that they can trust me. Now, I mean, we never drop the ball or things late. Sure, because we have ideas, we have writers, we have a lot of things going on. You may change your entire plan for your business and we need to adjust, whatever it is. If, I just have a new client now and they're like, oh, by the way, we're 2 months in. Did we show you the brand guides? I'm like, no, yeah, I didn't. What? So all of those little things happen along the way. But
Yeah.
for the most part, we say what we're going to do. And I'm brutally honest with people. Digital
Yeah.
marketing will not save your business. A
Yeah.
blog and some social media posts every month is not going to save your business. You have to have a complete business development strategy that includes marketing, prospecting, digital marketing, and then a sales process. And if
Wow.
those systems are not working in harmony and you're just relying, it's like having a sales process, but not having any prospects come in the door. It's the
Right.
exact same thing with digital marketing. Back in the old days, I could write you a couple blogs and you would get clients. Doesn't happen anymore though. So
No.
I tell my clients all of that. And then I can't say we become best friends, but I become very invested in their business and they in mine. So when I have ideas, when I think that they should be doing other things, I help them out.
Yeah.
So we book extra calls or I invite them to networking groups or all sorts of things happen.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, and I resonate with all of that because getting into a long-term contract, you're like, but I don't even know if you can deliver what I
Right.
need, and I've been burned so many times that I don't trust, and it's a shame because it happens to us as well. So many companies, especially small businesses, have been burned by recruiting agencies and staffing companies and job boards. And they're like, well, why are you different? Why are you not going to do that to me? And so it's hard to, earn that trust, but I'm the same way, very transparent, very like, I care about your business. If you're not the right fit for us, I will tell you, we cannot
Right.
accomplish what you need done. Rather than take your money and run, kind of thing. So awesome. Well, so let's switch gears. So now you're doing all this. Now you're in this domestic violence situation. Tell us as much about that as you want. You wrote a book about it,
I
which is
did.
great. Tell us about the book. Tell us about that situation, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Thank you so much. So it was April of 2020 during the apocalyptic shutdown of COVID.
Wow.
And our house, which was normally like a pot of boiling water, had really turned into a pressure cooker.
Wow.
And my children and I were talking about where can we go for a little bit of time. I just assumed that the house needed 2 weeks. No big deal.
Yeah.
Turns out my middle daughter was a student at the University of Pittsburgh. And I don't believe that there's any such thing as necessarily luck. I believe this was all divine intervention, honestly. Her
Yeah.
apartment up at Pitt was empty. Her roommates had gone home to quarantine with their families. They had unbelievably left beds and kitchen stuff. So we
Wow.
packed up the cart for 2 weeks and started our 6-hour trek from Philly out to Pittsburgh. And about 20 minutes into the trip, my children told me we're never going back there again. It's abusive.
Oh gosh.
Mom, he's abusing you. And it was my second marriage. So this was their stepfather.
Okay.
Yeah. So as I tell the story and have often, I'm in the car for 5 hours and 40 minutes now. I can't phone a friend. I can't text anybody. The kids are in the car. I'm freaking out. What are we going to do? And I'm madly in love with him still, which we can get to later. One of the reasons why, people don't leave abusive relationships.
Exactly.
And so we got to Pittsburgh, and I said, we stayed a month, moved back to the greater Philadelphia area, and then underwent 115 instances of stalking, harassment, and unwanted communication that lasted, it just stopped last year. So what wound up happening was I needed a restraining order. And so I called my local domestic violence center because a friend of mine had said they had helped her. So I said, okay, because everyone's like, you need to file a restraining order. And I called into the domestic violence center. I can't believe the story. And they said, we'll get you the help that you need, but would you like to talk to somebody? And I was like, I don't need to talk to anybody. I wasn't hit. Famous words. And the truth is, I had no idea that what I was living in could actually be considered abuse and domestic violence. I also had no idea that during my healing journey, someone in one of the support groups would at one point say to me, this is the worst case of psychological and emotional torture I've ever heard of.
Wow.
And so then after my healing journey was over in October of 23, I started to post on Instagram. I was like, everybody needs to know this stuff. Yeah. And a therapist friend of mine came and said, where are you getting the content? And I said, this is my story. And one of my best friends heard that and said, publish the book. So my book is not the big primer with all of the fancy research in it. My book is, this is what it looks like, this is what it sounds like, and this is what you can do about it, or this is what you should do about it. These are the resources available. So that is how the book was birthed. And then I said, wait a minute, as if my business was not already in chaos out of escaping domestic violence and my healing journey, now I added domestic violence to the mix. Wow. And I was like, no, I can do both. We got this. So I spent the better part of last year fixing what I had fractured in my business. And now things are very clear, but very me. And that was part of it. I had to go on a journey with my business, which I think every entrepreneur has to get to, where you're just not a staffing company, right? You're just not, you just don't help veterans, or you just don't paint houses, like whatever it is that you do, you are also you. So I said, okay, how am I going to blend these companies together? And they blend with me, and that's okay. And it's also okay to say, I'm still figuring it out. How boring is it to figure it all out?
Well, and how do you know you're done figuring it out? Do you really ever know? You always are learning and stuff. Well, oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing your story. And I think it's important, and I've been through this personally. You don't realize the abuse. Even going back to my childhood, I have conversations with my mother, and I bring up things that my stepfather would say to me, and she would laugh it off. I never forget. I got off the plane one time. I was visiting. I was in the Navy. Came home, and my stepfather was at the airport and said, you were sitting on the left side of the plane, correct? I'm like, yeah. He goes, yeah, I could tell it was tilted a little down, basically calling me fat. And my mother thinks that was funny. And at the time I didn't think about it, but that is mental abuse. That's somebody degrading you. Right. And so I think, what would you tell, and you probably have this in your book, and I'm looking forward to reading it. I just got a copy, but I haven't read it yet. What do you tell people? What are the signs of those kind of things? And what should they recognize that that's not right? People shouldn't talk to you that way, or call you names, or degrade you, because that is mental abuse. That's mental control.
Yeah. So first, I'm going to applaud you for sharing that story, because just in releasing that into the universe, into the powers that be, if we can get a little woohoo here on the podcast, that will help other people, because they'll say, ooh, me too. And I have to be honest with you, me too.
Yeah.
Right. Physical degradation. I don't even know making fun of your weight is a huge sign that an abuser is present, right?
Yep.
That is just body shaming, even telling you how to grow your hair, what color your clothes are, everything is off, right?
Yeah.
So so that is a sign. The biggest sign that something is wrong is love should not hurt.
Right.
So if someone makes you feel icky inside,
Yeah.
that's not good,
No.
especially if it's someone in a parental position or an intimate partner position in your life.
No.
Now, there are signs over the spectrum of a relationship, usually body shaming. Just like I always say, no one gets slapped across the face on a first date, right? No one gets body shamed on the first date. He
Yeah.
doesn't try to control your schedule on the first date. But there are signs very early on in a relationship, and we know these as what's called love bombing. So one of the things that I do when I speak on this topic is, I'm just not speaking to the victims and survivors in the room. I'm speaking to the wives, the mothers, the sisters, the brothers
Yeah.
who are battling this idea that they can't help their loved ones, but
Right.
something feels off.
Yeah.
He's a jerk, right? So love bombing looks like showing up, they just met and suddenly she's not allowed to go to Pilates because he's whisking her off for the weekend again. Or, they're spending every weekend together, romantic walks on the beach. Like that isn't reality.
Right.
Right. I mean, you expect some romance. Everybody in the beginning of a relationship is always on their A game, as I like to say. In
Right.
fact, my husband, and I always joke about this with him. So yes, there's A game behavior in the first couple months of a relationship, but it's not over grandiose expressions of love. You have to let things build over time.
Yeah.
What then happens is what you experienced is they start to drip in abuse. Sometimes it's overt, sometimes it's covert.
Yeah.
Suddenly the schedule is a problem. Their kids are better. This wasn't my fault. A big sign at this point is, oh my gosh, he thinks I'm perfect and all of his exes are crazy. Suddenly he's starting to rope her into this idea that he's the victim of all the previous relationships and he was perfect and did everything society told him he had to do.
Yeah.
So you start to hear those stories out of the victim and you're like, that sounds really, really weird. Right. And so then as the schedule is more controlled, now birthdays are controlled. And that's when I always say that the abuser takes the victim, the target, into the hellhole of the abuser's playground.
Yeah.
This is when we see love bombing coupled with abuse.
Right.
And the victim is blamed for the in between. So she's blamed. I always speak from my point of view, but I will say that it's 33% of women. It's also 25% of men. It's 50% of the LGBTQ community. So it's just not a woman's problem. But anyway, so she's then dragged into the abusive hellhole, blamed every time that there is abuse, right? You made me cheat. You're too fat was a big one for me. Like if you were thinner, I wouldn't have to yell so much and tell you to go to the gym, or I would, all of that. And so then there's he brings her back up with love bombing.
Yeah.
We can have this if you meet my standards.
Yeah.
And so that's the cycle. It's called trauma bonding. And that's the reason why we don't leave. We're trauma bonded. We believe it's our fault.
Wow.
So, and then we are further dragged into abuse where now he gets other people on his side. He'll call your friends, family, and colleagues and say, something's really wrong with her.
Yeah.
And, or she had a tough day. I think she needs a hug when she gets into the office. He also then isolates her from people. Mm-hmm. And this is when you hear that she's not allowed to spend time with people at work. In my situation, every man I came across that I stopped talking about them because it was a battle on my hands out of rage. Yeah. So that's what's going on. And what is so important is victims always need to remember that the abuse is not their fault. So Robyn, I want you to know that when your stepfather said those horrible things to you, you could have been 50 pounds. You could have been 500. It didn't matter. It didn't matter how they were. Oh, you didn't stand a chance. They were always going to find something to pick on.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. So, and it happened further into my life. How do you talk to women who have kids that feel like they have no choice? Like, where do they go? How do you help them realize this is not right? And I know a lot of times if the abuse is just happening to the mother, until it happens to the kid, they don't wake up and say, wait a second, you can't hurt my kid. You can hurt me all you want, but you can't hurt my kid. But how do you tell somebody or help somebody say, I have a kid, now I'm going to be a single mom. Where do I go? What do I do?
Yeah. So the first thing to realize is that that mom has a decision to make in her own time. And again, she's not going to figure it out all in one call.
Right.
With a domestic violence center. The first thing she needs to do is she needs to figure out her stuff. She needs to do some safety planning. And so it's not wise, unless obviously there's physical abuse or some sort of absolute torture. It's not wise to ever tell a victim, just get out of the house.
Right.
I mean, that would, so we have to get her safety
Not that
plan.
easy.
Yeah. And and we have to get her safety plan in place. And she does have to take a hard look at her finances. Yeah. If she is on a mortgage, I remember trying to rent my apartment back in town. And if I had been on the mortgage of the house, I wouldn't have had the space in my credit to also get an apartment. These are things we don't think about, right? When we say, oh, she should just leave them. Well, maybe she can't unless she's literally making like $500,000 a year. And we know the stats on that. The other thing that she's battling is somewhat what you said. He's abusing the mom. If the mom isn't there, who's he going to abuse when he's alone with his children? And now he's even more charged because she's left and everybody's going to figure out why.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't leave an abuser and everyone's like forever, oh yeah, it's because she's a total whack job. No, it doesn't happen, right? He's going to be embarrassed in the situation as well. It's just not, it just wasn't a bad fit. He was abusive. And other people also saw it while she was going through it.
Absolutely.
So she has to think about her kids and what that alone time is going to be with them. And is she going to be able to stomach it? He'll be on his best behavior for a while, but also, and as I said, post-separation abuse is the stuff of horror stories. He's going to drag her through the courts. I have friends where we have celebrated when their youngest turned 18 because suddenly all of the court orders didn't apply anymore to child custody and the kids and the parent and the mom is free, or dad. Sometimes it's the mom who's a lunatic. So you just have to, it has to be her decision to leave. If she is in an imminent danger situation, she is to immediately call the police, document every single incident. In fact, I tell victims that are thinking about leaving, start documenting stuff so you have it. Right? But call the police and call the local domestic violence center. Shelters may be filled. It may take you a while to get in. So let's make contact with them before you actually need to start from scratch because you're sitting in your car with your 3 kids.
Yeah. I think a couple of things. We're running out of time. Oh my gosh. A couple of things that I want to say. How do you explain to kids? So your kids were telling you, hey, mom, you're being abused. I mean, they could see it. Kids are very smart. Kids can see right through things. But how do you then how do you go from having a little kid and leaving that situation to someday having to tell your child how or why you left?
So I'm not an expert in this, and this is not something I had a lot of experience in, but the most important thing with children that I learned after raising 3 daughters is be as honest as they can handle. And you don't have to go through this alone. Your local domestic violence center has a 1-800 number that you can call for guidance. I'm one of the trained volunteers on those lines. I work on a text line once a week. Then there's the national hotline that you can also call for guidance. How do I start to talk to my children like this?
Yeah.
What do I tell them to do when they're with their dad? What's healthy for them to know and what's not? Yeah. And enlist the help of a guidance counselor, the teacher. Trust me, everybody knows what the abuser is like, and everybody is sick of him too. So everybody, well, I should say this, except for his friends and family, be very, very careful about going to them.
Yes.
But Pete, there are experts out there to support you in this process.
Wow. Yeah. And I think that's key. And I think the people listening or people going through this, if you have an inkling, and we're all smart human beings, something's not right.
Yes. Right.
You just know it. Like, there are those red flags. Pay attention to them and start to talk to someone. Start to get some help somewhere. Doesn't mean you got to leave immediately, but do talk to somebody. Start to get those ducks in a row. Start to figure out how to protect yourself, how to protect your kids. But all right, let's switch gears in our last couple of minutes here. You do TEDx talks about this. How is it on the
Not
TEDx
yet.
stage? Oh, you haven't yet. Okay, so you're preparing to do that. Is that something coming up?
So I did a TED Talk back in 2017 on the death of my first husband. We
Oh,
were
wow.
divorced and very good friends. And so that was a call for divorced parents to get it together and get along for the sake of the kids.
Right.
And I have applied for a TEDx that I'm waiting to hear from.
Oh my
Yes,
gosh.
on
Well,
domestic violence.
you have just been through all kinds of experiences, Jennifer. My goodness. I applaud you. You're an inspiration to so many others. So we're out of time, unfortunately. I could just, I personally could talk to you for a long time. But I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all this advice and this insight, because it's happening more than we want it to. And it's subtle sometimes. You really don't, like you said, it's covert sometimes. And you got to pay attention to those red flags and listen to yourself before it gets to be too deep. So what's on the horizon for your book? Let's close out with what's on the horizon for your book.
So my book was just I have to do this. There was
Yeah.
really no plan. There
Okay.
is a bigger memoir in me. I
Okay.
do have the ideal agent picked out, and I do look
Nice.
forward to working with her and getting a movie made someday.
Yes.
How's that sound?
Excellent. All right. And I will have known you when. I love it. This is great. All right, Jennifer, thank you so much for being on and telling your story and helping. We know that we've helped at least one person by
Absolutely.
having this conversation, and that's what we strive to do. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you.